Upcoming episodes on the Flying Monkey podcast. Country music artist Grant Malloy Smith. Three-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage. Actor-musician, the one and only Chris Mulkey. Father's rights advocate Robert Garza. And new episodes of Parent Stories. Go to flyingmonkeypodcast.com and select your favorite social media site to join us. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Rumble. Hey folks, welcome back. We have our next segment coming up here, and it's sponsored by the folks over at Hopeindarkness.info and stoptheabuse.info. And this is going to be Learning Theory with Dr. Bill. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. William Debris, PhD, experimental psychologist, graduate of Johns Hopkins University. How you doing today, Dr. Bill?
Very good. It's nice to be with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. So for our audience, explain to us, what is learning theory?
In the field of psychology, when it began, it was to investigate behavior, and basically learning is the science that explains behavior and investigates behavior.
How do we apply that to life?
All living forms behave, express behavior. So the questions of the relationships, what is the kind of mechanisms, procedures that would account for the the development of behavior, all kinds of behaviors, whatever it happens to be. Every single behavior is a function of learning, and all learning basically is a function of time. So the rules of learning we now know are universal. They apply equally, whether it's a human or a giraffe or a monkey or even a fish, that we all basically behave according to the same rules of learning.
One of my other segments of this show is Parent Stories, where I do a lot of interviews with parents that are going through family courts or CPS, and they've had their children taken away, and they have this thing that they've been calling for years, some syndrome or phenomenon called parental alienation. Um, how would we apply learning theory to that situation of a child like rejecting their parent or being mean to them and cruel and acting like that?
I think you're referring to what's going on in family courts today. And of course, I've made a study of the family courts, which is now into its 10th year. And what I've discovered is that the courts basically really don't understand this problem of children who are engaged in contact refusal or defiance or disrespect of another available loving parent. These behaviors are, again, like all behaviors, are a function of learning. That means most likely somebody is involved or engaged in an agenda to bring about behaviors that conform to that person's expectations. So let's say we have a parent who has a damaged behavioral past, and they are part of what their aim to do is basically capture these children in a way that the children become somewhat of we would call I guess, a security blanket for the parent. And in their efforts to basically get the children to focus all their emotions and attention for that parent, the parent trains the children using probably a technique similar to what we would call negative reinforcement that results in basically domestic violence, which is done through the children who are proxies to another loving and available parent. So the problem then in the courts is that they are really the wrong place to deal with situations like that. They're not set up for it. They're focused on legal concerns. The problem isn't legal, it's a behavioral concern.
What would be a good remedy for that? I mean, obviously, you're going through a divorce and you end up in court. How can parents or that end up going through this, I mean, how do they apply what you said isn't a legal problem and it isn't a court problem, it's a behavioral problem. How do we implement that into a situation where they're in a court of law, if you will, and they're this is happening and the court's ignoring it or actually sometimes even causing it. Yeah.
Yeah, the what like all institutions, especially the courts, which now we can say probably are well over 100 years old, family courts, um, like all courts, are people who have been conditioned to accept and believe in certain things, and a lot of those beliefs they're not in any way serving the interest of the people who are in the courts. For instance, mental health, which is a huge field. Um, it's it begins with Sigmund Freud and his descendants, which are now in the mental health field, and a book which is called the DSM, which has a fairly large list of what they call mental illnesses or mental disabilities or damaged personalities. What it really is, it's looking at things that are really not related directly to the things that are really most important to look at in a courtroom. And so the mental health community has been called upon for the most part for the last 50 years to be the primary source of information to the court, informing the court about issues such as what you call parental alienation. And so what I would say is mental health is a woefully flawed tool, um, because of its approach being client centered, non directive, and the way in which it needs to look always to a book for an answer, which they call a diagnosis. Um, it's a much cleaner, straightforward, and more honest approach when you look at the problem through the lens of behaviorism, through the lens of learning theory, because that's what really explains the behavior. And at the same time, it takes away the obvious problem then in courts, which is gathering evidence. And the evidence that's gathered through the influence of a person sitting behind a closed door with a mental health person is very different than the kind of information that you can bring to the court when you're using what is in structured science, such as chemistry, biology, or real psychology, which is observational strategies, creating an observational timeline, which is the way we do experiments, and being able to bring in data, which is inarguable, that creates something the court needs before it can act, which is a sense of urgency. Mental health people can't do that, and it's time wasting because learning being a function of time means that children practicing behaviors which are not constrained, which are maladaptive behaviors, will continue to practice those behaviors. So, what happens when you practice? You get better at it. So, if you're expressing behaviors that are contact refusal or defiance or disrespect, for instance, you would expect that those behaviors, if they're not constrained, that those behaviors will become more difficult to deal with over time. So the whole court system itself, relying on the time wasting habits and strategies of mental health, actually exacerbate, or I would have to say enable, the continuation and the development of the very problem they're trying to get rid of, which is this maladaptive antisocial behaviors, which really amount to cruelty if you really look at it when a child's rejecting another parent, behaving in a way that they're refusing contact and defiance and that sort of thing. So it's a serious problem that
Yeah.
if it's not controlled or not constrained, it's going to continue to grow until the child grows up, and then there's going to be other complications when the child graduates out of the court system. So the court system's in a sense necessary right now, especially since the age majority is 18. It gives time if the court knew how to react and can be trained how to react and can adapt in such a way that it can learn um, what learning theory is and how it applies and how it explains it and creates an honest, straightforward, common sense narrative that also will indicate the urgency of the problem. That would be the approach, and that's the approach that I've been taking now for 10 years, is helping courts understand a different explanation, a different pathway, a different solution, and being able to change the analysis process from going from personality inventories, which is basically what their evaluations do, to looking at the problem of parents through a parenting standard, which is far more relevant than an MMPI evaluation, which just doesn't give you the information that is as honest and straightforward and quantifiable as observational strategies. So that's what we do. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of changing the court's behavior, and that's our job, is to change courts' behavior through providing them new information that they formerly did not have.
It would be great to see that happen because I'm talking to hundreds and hundreds of parents, and it's always the same situation. And that seems to be the answer, and we need to somehow make that happen. Well, our time's up for today, though, Dr. Bill. So I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing this information with our audience, and hopefully, people can start to kind of wake up to it and understand it, and we can apply it to helping to save the kids, which is going to basically help society as a whole. So, um, again, thanks for coming on. Anyone who wants more information and would like to talk to Dr. Bill, we have a few things we're going to be doing. He's going to be on the show pretty much weekly. So you can send an email and with your questions for him regarding learning theory, parental alienation, court abuse, children that are behaving badly and disrespecting you and rejecting you. You can send your questions and go to the flyingmonkeypodcast.com and you can hit contact there and we'll have a link for you to send a question to Dr. Bill, or you can go to our Facebook page at the Flying Monkey Podcast group on Facebook, and you can send a message or post a question there, and then we'll read it on the next segment of the show that comes up in the following week. So, again, thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Flying Monkey Podcast. Like, follow, and subscribe to our social media sites on Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, and Truth Social. You can also go straight to our webpage at www.flyingmonkeypodcast.com.